Hey folks, Amanda here. Just a quick heads up that from time to time, the Survivor's Guide to Thriving podcast does include some adult language. So if you've got kids with you, you may just want to hold on to this episode to listen to a little later. Enjoy! Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Survivor's Guide to Thriving podcast. I'm Amanda Solman, and along with Mark Jewell, your host for this show and the creator of the Surviving to Thriving movement. Each week, we'll dive into the mindsets that keep us in survival mode and learn how to get on the path to a truly thriving life. If you're looking for a wake-up call and want some valuable tools to get there, you have come to the right place. After all, survival is dead. It's your time to thrive today. Now, let's head over to the show.
Alrighty, my friends, welcome back to another episode of the Survivor's Guide to Thriving podcast. I am super jacked to be on here today with two amazing gentlemen that I had the privilege to spend 2 weeks with down in the amazing jungles of Colombia earlier this year in March here of 2017. And so I've got Guy and Ilan Ferdman on the call with Satori Prime. Guys, welcome and thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity to get back on here and hang out a little bit. It's been a couple months since we were together.
What's up, brother? How you doing?
We've missed you, man.
I know, the feeling is likewise. Just as we were kind of setting this up, we were talking about missing Colombia, like literally dreaming about the Garden of Eden that we got to hang out and just be in.
We're back.
Exactly. It's been calling my name to come back down there. So, guys, I don't know, however you want to go about it. Give us a little background on you. What is Satori Prime? Who are Guy and Ilan? You know, just run us through that and help my audience understand who you guys are and what you do.
Bro, you want me to take it?
Yeah, you're the company storyteller. I feel like you should already know that without having to ask me that.
I know. I kind of assume, but then I'm like, I should at least ask. So I'm Ilan. I don't know if you guys are watching this on video or listening in your car. Our voices do sound alike, so good luck. So anyway, Satori Prime. So first of all, we built our company almost exactly 6 years ago, June 22nd. So in about a month, we'll be 6 years in business as Satori Prime. And the idea of Satori Prime was Guy and I were in commercial real estate finance. I started in about 2004. I think Guy joined me around 2006, and we did really well. And then obviously the world kind of collapsed in 2008. We thrived for the next 2 years and then bid it like everybody else and bid it hard to the point that Guy had to sell his car, move in with our parents to survive. I was living on unemployment checks, wasn't paying my mortgage, had my house go into foreclosure, and had a baby on the way. And at this ripe time, Guy had the clever idea that what we should do is start a business. Thinking that if we start a business, then we'll make a ton of money in the next 3 to 6 months. And God, that did not happen. Let me just say
I was convinced I could become a millionaire in about 4 to 5 months. I literally post-dated a check. I started the company. Well, I started online in January 13th. I think May 13th, I wrote myself out a check for $1 million, put it in front of me, and was 100% sure that I was going to deposit that thing.
And so really the idea of Satori Prime at the time was we were in love. We started our personal development journey back in 2003. So we've basically been at this for almost 15 years, each of us. And what we tried to do was build a company around what we loved more than anything else, which was giving back to people, impacting, transforming people's lives, etc. And the one thing that we realized was really missing was we didn't want to walk around and be like, hey, do you need a coach? You want to get coaching? We didn't want to do any of that stuff. So we realized marketing was really, really important. And in learning marketing, we actually kind of fell in love with that world. It brought a lot of the things that we loved because it still had the human behavior aspect. It had the communication and growth aspect. It had the sales aspect. And at the end of the day, we're coaches. So we realized that marketing was giving our lives freedom. And so we started training people in the marketing world on how to market. And it was only about not even like a year and a half ago, in 2016, we kind of built that business up to the point where it's sustainable, we can offset it, et cetera. And in 2016, we really started pivoting the company back towards what it is we came to start in the beginning, which was coaching people and transforming people's lives. And if you guys are watching this on video, our tagline is have it all, which is behind me. And the whole concept between having it all is the people that we tend to coach right now are very successful. You know, they're definitely 6-figure earners. Some of them are 7, even 8-figure earners. And while they've reached success in the money game, they've had to sacrifice their health or their relationships with their kids or their wives. And they get to the point where they're going, this can't really be all there is. And yet they don't know how to kind of get themselves back into that world. And so what we're looking at is, like, if you're looking at your life in all these different areas, how would you rate on a scale of 1 to 10? You know, where's your health on that scale? Where's your finances on that scale? Where are your relationships? Where's your sex? And our intention when you work with us is to get every one of those areas to a 10 so that you're living a life not for the future of like, oh, someday I'm going to be X, Y, and Z. You actually have that experience today. And when people do that and they live from that experience today of being fulfilled, being in love, having full self-expression, etc., their results are just multiplied, 4, 5, 10x, because they're just vibrating at a higher frequency. And that's really what we do.
Perfect. So I want to roll with something that you just said there that really stuck out to me, Ilan, because as I was driving into the office here over the noon hour, this podcast came on with Tony Robbins, and it was just a kind of a scene from one of his events, and he was interviewing people, asking people, what does it mean to be wealthy? Right? Like, what does it look like? How would you define it? How would you know if you were wealthy? Right? And one woman comes on and says, if my husband wasn't so stressed out about money, then we would be wealthy. Right? And another guy comes on and says, if I could just do more of what I love every day, then I would be wealthy. Or if I was just doing, more stuff every day that, that was in alignment with my purpose, that kind of stuff. And so as you went kind of person by person, what it really showed is that most of us just have no idea, right? How do you define wealth? What does it mean to be wealthy? And Tony's point is, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to wait until it's not all about cash, right? There are a lot of things that make us wealthy. So I know you guys work on that. That's the whole idea of Have It All. And I know you guys are working with entrepreneurs, and I largely work with the corporate audience, whether it's executives or folks out in the front lines of the sales force or in the shop. But the reality is, like, there's a lot of ways that we can define what wealth is. And so how do you help people achieve that faster? How do you help them get in touch with what that is for them?
Bro, can I just interject? You answer, but I just want to make one quick distinction. So the reason we created Have It All was exactly for that reason, Mark, and that is that Have It All for every single person, just like wealth for every single person or success for every single person, is self-defined. Yeah. And my Have It All is different than your Have It All, is different than Guy's Have It All. And the idea, that's why it's a great question, because for example, like Fanny's grandma, she always has this line, she says it over and over. She goes, I never achieved wealth in money, but as far as wealth in my relationships, I'm the world's richest woman.
Yeah.
And so I just wanted to kind of make that distinction. Like, that's a big reason for us with Have It All. It's not my Have It All and my idea of like, this is what Have It All looks like. It's, I want to help you obtain what your having it all looks like. So yeah, bro, go ahead.
I think that's an important distinction for sure. Well, let's say we take like somebody who's a billionaire. but they're trapped by the money. They're either working their life away, or I don't know, maybe they have to go overseas and deal with like investors all the time, or whatever it is that they might do. Just because they have a lot of money doesn't mean that they don't feel trapped in their life, or they're not emotionally unwell, or maybe their relationship with their wife is terrible and they have these mistresses on the side, or they're doing too many drugs, or whatever the hell it might be. So for me, it's like, I think of wealth as more of like an abundance factor. Like, I have abundance in the areas of life that matter to me. Maybe for you, abundance is just like having an open heart all the time and connecting with people. I'm sure Gandhi felt like a wealthy man. I'm sure Mother Teresa felt like a wealthy woman, and it had nothing to do with their bank account numbers. I'm clear about that, right? So for me, it's kind of the same thing. It's like, I define wealth as my ability to have freedom in my life, to make choices that are not determined by some kind of administrator. Like that for me is wealth. My ability to travel, definitely the quality of my relationships. And there have been many times, whether in states of ecstasy or not, with like what we were doing down in Colombia or otherwise, where I thought to myself, I'm like, my life is so freaking magical. Like, I really feel like I lived the life of somebody who's got so much more money. And I think to myself, like, you can't buy the type of experiences that I have, even if you were a billionaire at times. So I'm not saying that they can't buy awesome experiences. And you can't buy the quality of the relationships that I have. And that makes me always feel just like I've already, like, arrived. It's been a long time since, if there is such a thing as arriving, it's been a long time since I thought to myself, like, I need to make more money. What I genuinely think, and I think, Mark, you would probably attest to this too in your space, is like I look at how do I increase the impact and value of that which I'm passionate about, so that I can impact a greater community of people. And just to kind of like parlay this maybe into like a little bit of a different area that we can start talking about is, for me, Robert Greene has a great book called Mastery. And early on in our tenure, Ilan and I invest quite a bit of time looking at what does it mean to master something. And he creates a really simple distinction, but it's very powerful, that when you take something on in your life, you're going to go through this process of a student, practitioner, and then a master. And I think a lot of people just kind of sit in this space of like waiting for some kind of divine intervention, or kind of in this one day, someday mentality about here's what I'm going to do when I feel inspired. And they cautiously approach things, and they have this illusion that you have to be immediately good at something in order to keep doing it. And if they're not immediately good at it, they go, oh, I must not be talented at this. And they just kind of stop, even though if they would like kind of push through, they would get to that space. So what I've seen in any area where you start taking that journey of mastery, you're going to probably find that when you're a student, you're overwhelmed and frustrated. When you're a practitioner and you have some competency, you're going to be like enjoying the process, and then it's going to probably alter your life. And then when you get more into the mastery space, you're going to want to start impacting other people.
Right.
And whether that's in your local community or on a global scale, that remains to be seen in terms of like just what your goals are around what you want to create. And that's kind of what I've seen. So, we're kind of in that space where we've done work with our local communities for about 14, 15 years. We really, really want to look at the global stage and see like how do we have a conversation that impacts millions of people worldwide.
Absolutely. So one thing that you said within that guy, as you're talking about the student, the practitioner, the master, what we see a lot of in the corporate space is I'm really good at selling, okay, and so then I get promoted to sales manager, right? But I'm horseshit when it comes to managing people. Right? I know now it's a new job. Now I'm a student again, and I've got to not only be the student, but then sort of inspire everybody from this practitioner or master level of salesperson. It's the same thing happens in an operational role. But so then I look at like, okay, why do we do that? Why do we allow ourselves to, like, I loved this job that I had before. It was fun for me. It was my craft. I was good at working in that job, whatever it is. But now I have a new job because now I'm a leader, manager, whatever. And so what I see a lot of, because we have this definition of wealth, to bring it back to that, of wealth is about money and only about money.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's why I allow myself to go to that new job, to be more challenged. In most cases, unfortunately, people end up disengaged, right? Disengaged from that, or they have a hard time letting go of the identity that was them before in that old role. And we even see this in the entrepreneurial world, right? So
Sure.
we leave a job. Some people leave a job to create a business. We all have done that at some point, right? And then I get into that job, I get into creating that business. But what do? I create something that I'm a slave to.
Yeah, exactly. You just put yourself another job.
I just create something else. So, no, that's very, very interesting stuff. As I think about, I really like that whole trajectory from student to practitioner to master. And one thing I just love people that are either watching this or listening to this later on down the road, take into consideration, like, are you cool with where you're at? Are you good with where you're at? And are there some other ways that I can define wealth for me?
Yeah. And look, maybe for somebody who gets into, like, if you're going to change your job, I think my biggest regret looking back when I was a commercial banker is how little I invested in my personal education at the time. Like, as a salesperson, I was a great salesperson. Number one, generally was the number one salesperson in our company for years. And then I also remember being turned into a manager and not even having a clue on how to motivate these people in a proper way to do their work. Because for me, it's like, it was a commission-based job. Ilan and I never got a paycheck, like a paycheck to paycheck kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, shouldn't that be motivation enough for you to pick up the phone and just make that call? Like, otherwise you're not going to eat tomorrow. That's enough. But I think so if I would have invested in that, I probably would have enjoyed the process a lot more, because it would have cultivated this different part of me. It would have helped me with my communication. If I would have cultivated marketing and sales tactics, like online marketing sales tactics, the things I know today in that business, I would have quadrupled my income in the year.
Oh, absolutely.
10 extra income.
At least I just had no idea how to do any of that stuff. So I did the traditional, smile and dial kind of thing. And I'm like, wow, that's so ridiculous that I used to think that way. So I think there's always an opportunity with wherever you're at. It's like, okay, here I am. This is what's in front of me. This is what's been given to me. Yes, it's overwhelming and frustrating because you're in a space where it's like there's a little bit of unknown to deal with. But on the opposite side of that is all this amazing opportunity to really grow as a person. And it's like, if you're going to learn how to manage people better, and that's what you invest your time with, you're going to go home and you're going to be a better father. You're going to have richer relationships because you're going to have to work on your communication and look at where is it that I'm disconnected and not providing value for people, that are underneath. I don't even like that word underneath me, but that you're to motivate them properly and help them through breakthroughs so that they are more motivated to move into different spaces. Or you get put in that space and maybe that's the time where you're like, okay, well, my life is upgraded right now. Like, what's something that I put on the back burner in my life and really wanted to do? Mm-hmm. Maybe that's playing the guitar or having a conversation about how to have more vacation time so you can go on these trips and say, hey, look, I provide tons of value to this company. It doesn't really matter if I take an extra week or two off. Just having little things that would create some kind of creativity in your life. I think being creative is just a really important thing. And for me, at least, I think a lot of times in the 9-to-5 space, it takes that creativity away from you. You're told what to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's true, and I think one of the things that we work with people on, within our coaching programs, within just even our live events, is getting back in touch with what would if the 5-year-old version or the 9-year-old version of you was looking at you and your job and how you handle yourself today, what would they say?
Yeah.
Right. And we literally go back and say, okay, well, we kind of give ourselves a self-evaluation, and would they be happy with the level of compromise that you continue to make, with your family, with your kids, in order to please your boss, right? In order to please other people around you, to be something. I just put this post, something of this nature on Facebook yesterday. I mean, so many of us, and this is maybe going to bring us to talk a little bit about what we discovered down in Colombia and some stuff like that. But we so much of what causes the suffering for us in life is when we continue to pile on all of these layers of stuff. In order to just please everybody else, to be the person that mom or dad or grandma or grandpa or boss or CEO or customer or whoever they want us to be,
Yeah.
And that's been for me, like one of the biggest benefits of when we went to Columbia, I've been peeling back the layers for years. I've been around personal development like you guys since the late 90s, literally going from event to event to event. And I think what we did in Columbia was like all of that in 7 days.
Yeah. 20 years in 7 days.
20 lifetimes.
We can definitely get into it. But one of the big things that's just been really present to me is that when you start to shed those layers so that you can just be, who just remember who you were sent here to be, which is what I want more people that are coming through my programs to start learning how to do, just without even having to quit their job necessarily. Like that's not, it's, if that's something you want to do, great, but it's not necessary. Like you can still be that great person, that great version of yourself within your role. But we literally, like, here's a couple things that have come up for us lately, just in our business. So I had we've got a deal that's literally hinging on the whether the CEO, who'll just be really honest, is incredibly overweight, obviously doesn't take care of himself, at least not to what and this is my judgment, so I'm going to accept that. But that, it's obvious that he's probably holding himself back a little bit, and he can't get past the fact that we practice a Thrive with 5, work on whole person in order to make your sales team thrive. Right. Mm-hmm. But it's hinging on that. So there's been actual pushback because what I do with their people, to him, is scary. Rest of the team gets it. Right? But to him, that's scary because he's holding on to that identity. Just yesterday, we had somebody quit one of our programs because they think we're starting a cult.
Wow. Well, that's inevitable. Yeah.
You just reaffirm it and tell them you are.
Yeah, well, and so within our we have what's called the Thrive Today Ascension community. It's just our continuity group, and so we do a live training on Facebook Live every Monday night with that group. And so I found a 14-point checklist to see whether you belong to a cult or not, or whether a family member belongs to a cult. And I went through and checked off, just measured, self-assessed myself and my business and my team against that 14-point checklist, and we hit every single one. So according to that, we're literally a thriving cult. Yeah,
that's awesome.
So that was one of the big things, and we'll kind of transition and talk a little bit about that, because that's where we got to know each other. It was down in the jungles of Colombia, where literally we're all in our own journey, but just peeling back layers of a lifetime of stuff that any of us has taken on in our own situation. So I don't know what direction you guys want to go with that, but that was something I definitely wanted to bring up so that people know more about what some of the upgrading stuff that we're doing out there on the fringe of the personal development world.
Yeah. Well, the one thing, so we spoke about this before we got on, about that book, Stealing Fire, which if you want to get at least a glimpse into what is happening under people's noses right now that you are just completely unaware of at the highest levels of the highest companies in the world. I'm talking the Googles of the world. Yep. These are like performance enhancing experiences.
Yeah.
And Mark, I think you'll agree with this, because all three of us have done personal development work through coaches and seminars and books and podcasts and all this kind of stuff. And this is the biggest distinction I can kind of share with people. It's like when you read a ton of books and you work with coaches and you do all this stuff, you spend a ton of money, all of that information is generally cerebral. And what I mean by that is you take in information, you get a tool or a distinction or a methodology or something, and then what you do is you go back into your life and you actually have to recall this thing in the moment. Like, first of all, you have to be even aware of, oh, wow, I'm doing that thing. Okay, wait. So they told me about this tool and this distinction, and you kind of start doing that. And over time, like over a year, 2, 3, whatever, it becomes the way you operate. Like it just gets grounded into your bones, and you don't have to recall the distinction. It just kind of, you operate that way. There's that awkward kind of like feeling stuff out in the beginning.
Right. And that's, by the way, kind of sorry to interrupt your chain of thought, but that's assuming that your environment supports you long enough to ingrain it and not just pull you back to the old version.
That is a great point. Yeah. And we do a lot of things with our clients about how to maintain your transformation in an environment that doesn't call for that, like how to actually create that feedback loop so that you can maintain that.
Yeah.
What I find fascinating about what we did in the jungle and plant medicines and all this kind of stuff is that it works on you on a cellular level.
Right.
Like, I don't think, Mark, you didn't have to come back into your environment and then call up a distinction or a tool or anything like that and go like, okay, wait, so I experienced this in the jungle, how do I use it? No, it's just like you upgrade at a cellular level, and the words that come out of your mouth, the way you be is so different, it's so shifted that the people around you, you don't have to go into that circle and like tell people like, hey, I experienced this, you know, listen to me this way and experience me that. It's just like people around you are going, dude, you're different.
Yep.
Like, and they love it. It's not like you're different and you're weird or it's crazy. It's like, I feel better when I'm around you and I like talking to you now. And you're like, I'm not doing anything.
Exactly.
And that was, to me, the biggest, that's what makes that work so unique and different than anything else. I will say that I do believe that having the background that we have with all of that personal development stuff makes the experience with, in ceremonies, it makes it better because you have all of this stuff in you, and then this just kind of like streamlines it, puts it together, and just like builds it into your system, and you're like, whoa, upgrades.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's definitely a different feel. I've had a number of people, not even that haven't even seen me in person, but that have come back from over the web and from Facebook, from just Facebook video or whatever, even just the content that I've posted, and said, hey, what happened like 2 months ago?
Yeah.
Like, what went on with you? Right. And
yeah.
I don't feel different. Really, like I notice some things here and there. I notice it's easier like to get into flow when I'm speaking and when I'm training, and some of that stuff just seems to be easier to access and get right into it rather than what used to be like a warm up period or something like that. But so much of it is just so natural, and others are like, that's weird, and that's where. So here's what's interesting. I think Guy mentioned vibrational frequency. I just did a podcast interview last week with Marcy where we talked about vibrational frequency. So what happens is as you allow yourself to be, and I want to make sure that we differentiate today on this call with you guys the difference between do and be. So let's go there maybe in just a second. But what we've found is that there are a number of people who just can't identify with that because it's too much right now for them, right? And so they're actually falling away. I've had people drop out of programs, clients that just didn't make sense to continue on with for that reason. We've actually got more definitive about who we want to work with. And so we actually, in some cases, stopped pursuing entire companies because like that doesn't feel good. So just like you guys qualify, I'm sure, the type of entrepreneurs that you end up bringing into coach, we're now looking at companies that way. And within our industry, people like beer. And so we say it like this. We're like, if I want to go out and drink a lot of beer this weekend, I'm going to get a case of Coors Light and I'm going to go to town. Okay. But if I want to just enjoy myself, okay, I'm going to have my meal. I'm going to have my salad and my steak or chicken or whatever it is that you eat. And I'm going to have maybe a couple of Summit IPAs. Right? But I'm going to like it. It's not about getting smashed. That's what that's what we're providing to the marketplace from a training and coaching perspective so that we can do more of what we love. And it's a premium, but it is we're not looking to be everything to everyone. And that's
impossible.
So what's been easier for me is to actually differentiate that and just be cool with that and know that means that we just don't get to do business with some people, but then we do get to do business with those that get it.
Yeah, or ready to receive it.
Yeah,
right. Because it's like whatever, you're going to get what you want to get, and just like in the world of do and be, I think Ilan and I often use this example. Like being is kind of a simple thing that gets extremely muddled and overcomplicated. And I never have to wake up in the morning and say to myself like, today I'm going to be a man. right? Or today I'm going to be a driver when I get in the driver's seat of a car. It's just like I just am.
Yeah.
But there aren't actually a lot of areas in life where people naturally are just being anything. It's like it's like complicated for them. It's like, okay, well, I want to be a millionaire, right? And it's just like getting in that car or waking up in the morning and being a man. There's a state there, there's a vibration there. That vibration leads to specific actions, and those actions lead to a result that someone being that way gets. Right, so a lot of the Western world philosophy, and this is like very like personal development, I don't know, 102 or something, is all about like do, have, be. I got to do something to have what I want to become the person. So it's like, well, I got to work really hard to have the money, and then I'll be happy, right? And then you like get there and you're not happy, or like I got to go on dates so I can have my wife, and then I'll be happy when I'm there. And then it's like you're married and you're miserable. And then it's like when I get divorced, I'll be happy. Then you're divorced and you're miserable, and it's just like this perpetual cycle. Eastern philosophy, which is, really has only been around in our culture for 60, 70 years, like the Beatles basically bringing in like, a lot of that in like the 60s and the LSD movement and whatnot, kind of brought in this idea of like be, do, have, right? Just change your state. That state has specific actions. Then you get the results that person gets. So look, there's the world of doing and there's the world of being, and they both have, there's nothing wrong with doing. It just has specific limitations. So if we're looking at like riding a bicycle, and that like developmental work is all about gaining different levels of balance within your personal experience, right? So everybody's had the experience of gaining balance in the world on a bicycle. Now there's the doing aspect of it, which is like the mechanics. Get on the fucking bike, pedal your, this is what you do with your feet. You're probably going to fall off a few times, which is going to challenge your being state. And eventually something miraculous is going to happen. You're going to hit this exact point in time where a balance comes into your state. Now, the doing was like the action that led to a different way of being, and now you're being in balance.
Yeah.
And what's beautiful about experiences like that is that can't be taken away from you. You can't unlearn that, because it went from a concept of like, oh, I understand how to ride a bike, right? And I could show that to you for hours. I could diagram it for you and explain it for you and do all those things. And you're not, and in your mind, you can be able to conceptualize and understand what it means to get on the bike and have balance. But you can't have balance on the bike until you get on the freaking bicycle.
Yeah.
And then in a moment, you go from understanding a bicycle to knowing balance.
Yeah.
And I think that's the shift between doing and being, is like, oh, I understand that, to like, oh, I know this. I have wisdom now. And when you marry those two is where life takes on a different role, because now people who understand balance on the bicycle do have access to something in this life that people who don't know that balance don't have access to. That's why kids feel free the moment they get on a bicycle, because they have access to possibilities that the kids that don't ride the bicycle just don't have.
Yeah.
So when we're looking at these experiences, when we're looking at personal development, when we're looking at bringing these higher spiritual concepts into your realm of your knowing, again, it's just different levels of balance, that somebody who's had that experience has access to something that the person who doesn't will never understand until that experience happens. And that goes across the board for everything.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's no different than just new knowledge inside the workplace. Right?
Yeah.
If somebody's upgrading and growing, and then all of a sudden other people are, well, first of all, what did you do, or what are you doing, or why are you so weird?
Why are you so weird?
I see that. I actually see it a lot in the corporate space, and this is a message for. This is not a new message for anybody in the corporate space that has listened to any of the other 34 episodes of this podcast that I've produced. But people are afraid to stick their necks out, because what the fuck will they say?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, people, they don't want to stick their neck, even though you know a better way, or you know a better philosophy, or you know that you're right, or that you could go get that client, or that this idea that would help grow the corporate business, but you don't, because well, what if it fails? Like, what happens? That kind of stuff.
Yeah, stepping out of line, conformity. The corporate space in a lot of ways is a macrocosm for society, right? Like, it's a continuation of the same stuff that happens in high school. It's like if you step out of line, you're out of conformity, you're not going to be accepted, or there's going to be judgment there, and there's all these mental barriers around fear and what it means to be somebody who is in their power, is in their self-expression. In a lot of ways, the corporate atmosphere does not allow for that exploration.
Yeah.
And I think that's why a lot of people are drawn to spiritual development and personal development, because it's like, okay, well, yes, that is something that I do with my life, but my work does not define me. And for most people, like, I'll give you just a quick analogy. This is a Debbie Ford analogy. It's kind of mixed in with my analogy. When we're born, like I always say, when people are around a child, like a small baby, they're elated, and the reason they're elated is they're in the presence of a being it's an unshaped life. So they look at this being and they think, well, anything is possible for this being, right? And that reflects to yourself your own infinite potential and own infinite possibility. So Debbie has this amazing analogy where she says, imagine you're like in this castle, and this castle has thousands of rooms, and every room represents like a different way that you could be. So when we're little, it's like we give a grand tour of the castle. And at the end, we ask for feedback. And we're like, hey, can you give me some feedback? And they're like, yeah, this place is beautiful, but there's that one room in the back corner. It's all fucked up. You got to do something about it, right? So eventually you kind of conform to, okay, there's something wrong with that room. You make the changes, you repaint it, you feng shui the furniture, whatever, put it back on the tour. And no matter what you do to this room, you keep getting negative feedback till eventually you're like, you know what, I have all these other rooms. I'm going to take this room off the tour. Now, imagine that over a lifetime. It's like you're always going to get some kind of negative feedback about what you're doing, and it's like that's what we do. We just close all these doors. And eventually it's like you leave 2 doors open in this room, in this castle, and you're like, I know who I am. You know, like I'm this and I'm that. I'm my work and I'm this at home, and that's all that I am. And you forget that it's like you're this being of infinite potential, this, infinite possibility. And I really think this kind of work, ecstasis work, plant medicine, personal development, spiritual work, if it's good, it's about opening those doors and having you re-explore this like infinite potential side of yourself so that you can kind of step back into like more of your truth, which is who you were when you were a kid, that kind of gets lost and veiled under all this conformity.
Yeah, absolutely. So this came up in a conversation that I had with Marcy recently, and there were some areas of my life that I was struggling to feel more flow in, right? I felt struggle in a couple of key areas, and so she basically asked me, and this is just to highlight your point, Guy, where are some areas that you do experience flow? Like where are some areas where it's easy? Where life is fun and easy. I'm like, well, I don't know, when I'm jumping on the trampoline with my kids. In fact, actually, basically just about anything that I do with my kids. And I watch Guy, through Facebook with your kids and with your family. Like it's fun and play. And like as a dad, it's so easy to go with your, my 9, my 7-year-old, my 16-month-old, now 17 months now this week already. Wow. And kind of, it's so easy for me to access flow, fun, ease, play. We lose ourselves for a half hour at a time, like on the trampoline. Yep. Like we accomplish a day's worth of being together in 30 minutes on the trampoline. When I'm on stage, like when I'm doing stage work, or if I'm training in the classroom, or when I'm in a great coaching moment, right? It's easy for me to access that. Yeah, when it was coming to like cash flow in my business, or certain other things, and getting to the next level with certain clients, like I was making it hard. Well, what was I doing? Okay. What I didn't get, and what I got in that moment was like what I'm doing, like when I'm with my kids, or when I'm with my wife, or when I'm just in these areas where it's easy for me to be in flow, I'm just allowing it to happen. I'm just being in my regular, true nature of who I am, right? And then I go over to the work, or I go over to the money, or I go over to the whatever the other thing is where you have all that struggle in life, if it's physical, spiritual, financial, whatever. Now I'm trying to do stuff. Right? And that, like when I got that, right, that was like, wow, like what infinite possibilities have I been closing off? Like what rooms have I been closing off, and not accessing because it's too hard, or I can't figure it out. Right?
Yes. I'll also add there that the reason that is because around your kids and family, for example, there's very little around. Well, not for everybody, but when you're like jumping on a trampoline, there is no right way. There is no outside force that you're trying to appease, or you feel like you're being judged by, or some sort of measure, right? Yeah. There's no like, you must jump this way with your family to make this, or you be a good dad. It's just like, I'm going to love on my family, and that's all there is to do. And as long as I feel good and they feel good and we're all laughing, we're all having a good time, like I know that this is working. Whereas when you get into that workspace and that world,
it's supposed to look a certain way.
Exactly. And that's where people get messed up, because it's like, well, I have to be at this level. And we're always comparing ourselves, always. And in corporate America and entrepreneurship, right, there's always someone that you're looking at that's like, well, they're doing it at this level and I'm not that good. And so everything you do is with this voice in the back of you going, no, that's not good. You're not working hard enough. You're not doing this. You're not. And it just becomes draining. And the funny part and the irony to all of this is that if you're in that state, like, first of all, comparing yourself to anyone or anything other than yourself the day before is one of the biggest pitfalls of life, period.
Absolutely.
So that's, if you could avoid that at all costs, or at least be cognizant of like, oh, wow, I'm at the effect because I'm comparing myself, then that would be a great first step. If you were just to focus on improving your skill, kind of like what we spoke about, this is why I think that book Mastery is amazing. And the other book that I would add into that is a book called Mindset by Carol Dweck, which is all about how we learn and like what stops us from learning and how we excel at learning. If all you focus on is improving, being fulfilled, being in love with what you're doing, loving the craft. Why are musicians get lost? Why do people like us, when we speak on stage, we get lost? It's our craft. We love it. We get lost in it. We live in it. We grow in it. We thrive in it.
Yeah.
And if you can create that as your occurring world so that when you walk into your job, every sales call, if your goal on the sales call was to leave the person on the other end of that call feeling awesome. That's it. Like, not to sell them shit, but just to feel awesome. Like, when they get off the phone with you, they're just like, wow, I love talking to Mark, right? Mm-hmm. You would feel so good. And what happens is that vibration that you create, that energy that you create, creates more goodness. When you're in a world of I'm competing with this person, or am I doing this right, or how do I strategize and figure this out, you're basically dropping your vibration real low, and then you're like, I'm working so hard, but nothing's happening. It's because your energy is just shit. It's like, I'm not that good, or I don't trust myself, or I'm not smart enough, or I don't spend enough, whatever it is, and it's all just creating terrible results. And you're going, but why? Well, that's why.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's as you're going through the description of that and breaking that down for us a lot, as I look at just how. Well, one of the common questions that I get asked in my space is like, well, how are you different from the next speaker? Right? How are you different from your competition? And I literally was at an event the other day and somebody said, well, who do you see as your key competition? I couldn't answer the question. I no longer think about anybody else's competition. I'm like, if you want somebody that does what that guy does, then you hire that guy. And if you want somebody that does what I do, then you hire me. It's very simple, right, in my mind. And then another one, this has been one of my favorite ones lately, is like, well, how would you compare yourself against, or how do you stack up against, whatever, or how are you different, right, from whatever the other speaker, trainer, coach person is? And I said, I don't define variety. Right? And that's how I differentiate. I said, define why variety is important to you. Right? What I know is that variety is a basic human need, right? We all need and desire variety. That's why, that's why you would look at hiring different types of speakers once in a while. So I totally respect that. So what is variety to you? Right? And I'm hoping that in that case, if it makes sense to them that the way that I answer their question is just with another question, that just makes me somebody who actually is different, right? Because most people get into persuasiveness.
True. Instead of justifying and creating reasons for it, it's like, hey, look, when you operate from this feel space, it's definitely like, hey, this either vibes or it doesn't. And there's nothing wrong with either individual if it doesn't vibe together. It's like everybody's in a different place on their journey and their path.
Yeah.
And they're, it's just like meeting someone for a date, or like falling in love romantically, or building any kind of relationship. There's got to be that feeling there. On paper, everything might look hunky dory, and then you're just like with that person, you're like, it just doesn't feel good to be together.
Yeah.
And that could be the only reason you don't do business. And then
absolutely.
Yeah, so it's all about that.
One other thing that I want to go just one level deeper with this whole, comparison thing, because we do it to ourselves too. Like we compare ourselves against where we think we should be. And that happened to me when I turned 30 here about 6 years ago here in 2 weeks. And so what happened for me at that moment is I woke up at 30 thinking I should be at this level of success with this much money and have this much recognition and this much significance in my life, and I'm not there right now. And so that was where, there's something going on in the universe here about 6 years ago when we were all getting started on this trajectory that brought us together on this call here today. And that was just comparing myself against this like ideal version that never existed. Yeah. That I sort of wished had existed. And this brings me back to a moment that we were in Colombia when I was having kind of a tough time during one of the ceremonies that we were in. And I started to panic a little bit and kind of felt like I wasn't going to be okay. And so I remember Doña Marta, who, for those of you that haven't heard the story in the past, who is our shaman or shamanista while we were down there, she looked at me and she says, "Don't panic." And to this moment that sticks with me, like that's just now, like I get into, if it's whatever, what would normally be a tough situation for most people, I no longer panic because it's that version of myself didn't show up today. That's fine. I'll just, whatever. I'll maybe they'll show up tomorrow. Yeah. But I think a lot of us get stuck, comparing ourselves. Somebody said to me the other day, "Hey, what's the difference between me and this other guy who's exactly the same age, but he has all the responsibility. He got the title. He got the bigger paycheck. He got the promotion. I didn't. What's the difference between me and them?" And that's a trap that I think a lot of us get in, going, just one level, not just comparing ourselves against each other, but like benchmarking myself against something that doesn't even exist for me.
Yeah, right. Yeah, there is no out there. That's the thing. Like there really is no out there. And here's the thing. A lot of the times, and the people that you compare yourself to, if you lived in their head and if you lived in their experience of life, it is the last place you would want to be.
Yeah.
We see the tip of the iceberg and we see just what we choose to see. Exactly. We don't see what that person sacrificed. We don't see what that person's home life is. Like, it's not I want that. It's you get the bundle deal. When people always look at, athletes or they look at actors and they're like, "Oh man, they have such a great life." And then I think to myself, I'm like, imagine leaving your house. And every time you leave your house, 15 people are flashing lights at you to take pictures. You can never have a normal dinner. You can never go for a drive. You can't even go for a walk around your block. Like, I don't know, to me, that would be torture.
Right.
So, like, there's a lot of stuff that comes with a certain lifestyle. And for us, for example, if I even wrote out my journey of what I had to go through to get to where I am today, like if I wrote down my story of hardships and someone gave me that 6 years ago or 10 years ago and was like, "Look, I'm going to promise you X. In order to get to X, you have to go through this," I would have said no. Like, I would have said no about my own life.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, take that journey and then try to sell that to your wife, right?
Yeah.
Babe, here's how many months we're going to go without getting paid while I pursue this dream, right?
And honey, you're pregnant? Oh, I won't be able to support our family, just so you know.
Right.
I always think in these moments, like, this is what debunks that old saying, like, if I knew then what I knew now, like, I'd be so much better off. It's like, you wouldn't. A lot of times ignorance is what leads you to like fantastic action. If you actually knew, like, if I did like imagine going back to 2008 and like recreating a business, I just don't. I'm like, who the fuck has the stamina for that shit? but I just at that time, like, I just didn't know any better, and that kept me in like massive imperfect action. I was just really lit up about the possibility of what we were creating, and then like the outcome for other people and all that great stuff. And yeah, I think like, look, you can find work-life balance, and I think people a lot of times use the workspace as an avoidance technique for really looking at, what am I really truly afraid of in my life, and why am I afraid? What's the programming in there? How could I feel different about it? How could I have a different experience of life? and again, going back to that like idea of conformity, because it's like that, it's like, don't rock the boat. You know, if you change yourself, like, people won't like you or they won't accept you anymore. And it's like, well, I've kind of found my groove over here. I'm fucking miserable, but at least I've conformed and no one's judging me. Like, you know, and like playing it safe versus like really going for it. And again, for some people, like being in that workspace is very nurturing for them. You know, that I'm definitely not that kind of person. But it's like to each their own. And I think we all, it's prudent to do this kind of work just to seek your truth. And not be told what it is, right? Because I really do think that's an individual journey for every single person on this planet.
Can I just add one thing here? And this is like an awesome tool. This is something we teach our clients. I'm sure, Mark, you probably do this as well. And that is, when your why is big enough, the how becomes really easy. And so one of the things, you know, we have certain clients that are in corporate America or corporate wherever they are in the world, and their context around going to work sucks. And because their context around going to work sucks, they're miserable. And if you just, it's super easy, and this works for every area of your life, not just work, just if your context for coming home is, my wife is a nag, you're going to have a shitty at-home experience.
Yeah.
Right? If your context for, I go to work and I don't do anything right and my boss rides me, you're going to have a shitty work experience. On the other hand, if your context for a home life is, man, every time I come home, I feel so much love and support, right? You're going to run home. If your context at work is, I'm in a work environment where I get to practice being better every single day. I get to hone in skills that no matter what I do for the rest of my life are mine. So like, I'm using this as a practice ground. For a long time when I was in commercial real estate financing, I was like, this is so cool. I get to play with other people's money to learn my lessons as an entrepreneur. Like, I always knew that I was going to go out on my own, and I got to like learn about investing. I got to learn about sales, all without putting in a dime. I was like, that's how I treated it. I still treated it as I treated it as if it was mine,
right? Even
though I didn't put a penny into it to get started. Eventually I did. And that context to me had me be excited about getting better every single day, regardless of what was happening in the company, because the only thing I was looking at is, hey, am I, out of the X amount of sales calls that I had today, how many of them went really well? Like, what's my closing ratio? How am I improving? How are people on the other end responding? Do I feel more confident in the way that I'm speaking to clients? Am I finding better deals? And like, all of these things were my measurable results that other people didn't look at from the outside and go, oh, Ilan's doing really well. Like, I didn't give a shit. It was about me looking at my measurable results so that I could go home and feel great about my workday. Like, I got better today. And I think as long as your vision of what you are intending to do, like, that context is everything. Yeah. So if you're in a sales job especially, right, like, sales jobs can be really demanding because there's a lot of people giving you, saying no, and like, you still have to get back in the game. Right. Again, if your context was, someone said to me a long time ago, like, no is my second favorite answer. No is a great answer. Mm-hmm. The worst answer is maybe, or like those wishy-washy. Like, no is a great answer.
Absolutely.
And just getting comfortable with that and understanding that and continuing to build a relationship with 100% enthusiasm, regardless of what that response is. Like, the better you get at that, you're like, I'm getting better at this, and eventually the results will just pour in. It's context.
Yeah, and here's one just distinction I'd love to tack onto that for people that might be taking this on is sometimes I wait for my VP or my boss or my leader at work to set that context for me. I wait for my wife to set that context, or my husband to set that context, or my kid or my neighbor or whoever is setting the context for the places that can be great or can be shitty in your life. And so just watch out for that. I mean, that's one of the biggest things that we run into. So we'll get into coaching with salespeople who say, we'll ask, okay, so what are the objectives that you're out to get in the next, or achieve or sell this year? And like, well, I haven't actually been given any goals yet. And I always take a step back. I'm like, oh, shit. Okay, we got to cover that stuff first. So, okay, great. Like, what could we do in the next 90 days? Even if your boss doesn't get that stuff to you, like, what do you think is possible? That's what I'm going to hold you accountable to, right? And so, what is maybe you've got somebody got promoted into that role, or they hired from outside the company, and you're not jiving with that person. As soon as you're waiting for that person to set the context for you, life is going to become hell. It will become your own personal hell for 8 to 12 hours a day, depending on how long you're going to decide to go there. And so just watch out for that. I mean, that's what I think about. I mean, we're the three of us born bred entrepreneurs. I mean, there's nothing that we were ever anything else that we're ever going to end up as, right? From a occupational perspective. But the large majority of the people that I work with are not necessarily in that vein, which is perfectly fine. What you are, however, and I want everybody to think about this, in today's economy, you are an enterprise entrepreneur. Right? You are continuously building your own brand inside that company. What you are getting in the way of monetary compensation is a direct reflection of how much value you're putting into the market. No different than what the three of us do. Right? And so it's just a different dollar figure. Your overhead, what you get to do with money is maybe a little bit different, but the reality is you're an enterprise entrepreneur. And you work for an enterprise, but you are your own brand. You have equity, 100% equity stake in yourself within that company. And that's just something I want you to consider is there is that. And when you find ways to add epic value in that company, then you can start to call the shots. You can start to set your own context for what you want. I just kind of wanted to tag that on, because you're talking about like context is everything, right, in life.
Make your value undeniable.
Absolutely.
And I was lucky enough to hear this guy's so good, John Paul DeJorio. He is the owner of Paul Mitchell and Patron and a bunch of other companies. If you ever get a chance, and just like YouTube, he does a lot of talk. Just brilliant. He's like a Yoda, and he happens to run billion-dollar. He's so spiritually inclined, and like it's just so beautiful to listen. He broke up so many stories that I had, but he shared the first job he ever had. Someone asked him, like, what's your biggest life lesson? And he shared this story about he got a job, something like the guy paid him like $1 a quarter or something. I think per day or something. It was like something crazy. This is way back in the day. To clean his office. He was like some college professor or something. And the guy was known to be super stingy and like not really nice and whatever. So John Paul walks in there and cleans the office, and he comes back the next day, and the guy's like looking at him. He's like, we need to talk. And he goes, okay, what? He goes, what did you do? And he goes, I cleaned your office. He's like, no, you did this by yourself? Like, who was here with you? He's like, what do you mean I cleaned the office? He's like, no one's ever cleaned this office like this. Like, it's never been this clean. And John Paul said this great line, because he was like lifting stuff and cleaning under the carpets and just moving stuff, everything. He goes, the one thing I learned is always do your work to the best of your ability, like someone's watching. Because the thing is, like, we don't hold ourselves to that high of level unless someone's there watching.
Yeah.
And he's like, it matters most what you're doing when you're not watching. And if you do your job with excellence and integrity.
Yeah.
So on day two, right? So like the guy comes in, and on day 2, he already gave him a raise.
Wow.
So what I'm like, one of the things is, if you treated your occupation like it was your self-expression in this world, and it is a way for you to paint your own canvas, regardless of what people say, think, or any accolades or appraisals. Like, that is undeniable. That energy, that force is undeniable. One of our clients walked into his office the other day, and they're going through some restructure stuff, and the boss pulled him in, and because he's been living from this place of excellence, the boss pulled him in and he's like, hey, Mike, listen, we've noticed that you've really been helping out and picking up the slack as we're going through this reorg. We just want to let you know that we're giving you a $5,000 bonus.
Wow.
He wasn't doing that stuff for the $5,000 bonus.
Yeah.
It's just when your value is undeniable, that stuff happens. Don't do it with that as the outcome. Do it because it matters to you to do your work at the highest level of excellence, and know that whether it comes from your boss or whether it comes from your company or not,
yeah,
it will always be paid to you some way, shape, or form when you live life at that level. And that could be, you know, money come from different sources. It could be in returns in incredible relationships, better sleep, better sex. I mean, it's all tied together. It's just we cut that aspect of it because we're like, fuck it. I'm not going to do it for them. Like they don't appreciate me. Don't do it for them. Do it for you, and just watch how your life expands unimaginably.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. I love it, man. I think any executive in America would just want their people to hear. Anybody who's listening to this, you would want your people to hear that message and just remove the roadblocks that are keeping them from doing that if you can, and then just allow them to be and do those things. I mean,
take personal responsibility.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Guys, so I want to just ask you one more question, and we'll kind of bring this thing in for a landing. It's been an amazing conversation. We're up to an hour of amazing, just golden content in here. So I appreciate you guys so much for your story and background and everything. Ilan, you alluded to the book Stealing Fire. I listened to it on audiobook. I bought the paper copy just so I could internalize more of it and go back through the stuff again. It's talking about what people are doing to create some of the most amazing organizations like Google, even like the Navy SEALs, right? The Navy SEALs are utilizing this stuff, trying to create that, flow states, group flow states. So could you guys just kind of allude to, what are some things that you guys are doing to help your clients, access that, whether it's, eventually, I don't know if you guys are going back to Colombia or not, taking people down there. I know I am. I'm going to take a group down hopefully in October of corporate badasses myself and take some people down that way. But what are some things that you guys are doing, and what's the benefit, that we're kind of seeing? Because we're, the one thing that I always like to say, or quote with Tony Robbins, is that success leaves clues, right? And so we look at some of the most successful organizations out there today, and what their leadership are doing is really, trying to find ways to hack into group flow, really leaning into the neuroscience. And there's a whole nother podcast episode if we just talked about this stuff.
Sure.
So give us a teaser, if you would. What are these organizations? These are the most elite. The SEAL Team 6, right? Google. There have been a number of other organizations that these are the kind of things that they're leaning into to create more flow for their employees. So what are you guys seeing, and what are you guys going to do to support your clients with that?
Broski?
I was looking at you, and you looked like you were about to jump into it. I think that the simplest thing is, habit forming. I think that also this will just align a lot more for people like in the doing world. I think a morning routine to me is an absolute game changer. Like that habit alone, I think there's a way too big of a tendency to wake up first thing in the morning, roll over, look at your phone, start stimulating your brain with worldly events, with what's happening in your news feed, and ultimately what you're actually letting in is a lot of negative programming. Like instantaneously you get upset about the way the world is, or your best friend or some idiot in your newsfeed posts something that you don't agree with, and you start the judgment machine first thing in the morning. And the beautiful part about the world in the time of the morning is there's actually less psychic energy in the world. Like everyone's outputting energy, and it does impact us. Like everyone's empathetic. People say like, oh, I'm empathetic, but to some degree everyone's empathetic receiving information. And there's this amazing opportunity in the morning to just train your brain to being balanced and centered, and your body to be aligned with it. And so I say the morning is for alignment. The evening is for activation. especially when it comes to like meditation. So for me, like meditation, reading something that's value to my brain, not like a sex novel or just like the latest craze and whatever trilogy came out this month. Like I don't, that stuff is cute and all, but it doesn't really like increase the value or quality of your life. Whatever input you put into yourself is the output you're going to get out. So for me, it's meditation every single morning. People always ask, well, how do I get started? There's apps on your phone today. One's called Calm. There's another one called Headspace. I really recommend at least a 5 to 10 minute meditation practice in the morning and in the evening before bed. Read great books in areas that matter to you, things that will light you up, whether that's in your business or how to better yourself. I think if you really want to study humanity, you study relationships and communication. Your whole life is about relationships, whether it's a relationship to yourself, a relationship to others, a relationship to health, a relationship to God, a relationship to money. Everything is a relationship. You want to understand humans, understand how it is that we build, nurture, and interact inside of the world of relationships. Every area of your life will be impacted positively by doing that. And then like just something creative. Something creative in the morning, whether you like to dance or sing or you like to draw, or maybe even just write. Just take that time, let yourself awaken the parts of yourself that really matter. And I think like for me and Ilan, going back about 2 years now, like that's just there's no morning where I don't do that. Like not meditating is not an option for me. It's a non-negotiable at all. I don't feel the same when I don't meditate. And it'll increase the quality of your sleep and just like your day to day. And if you don't know, what that's about, then I promise you, it's one of these experiences. You just get going, and it reveal itself.
Absolutely awesome. Ilan, anything to add from you?
I think one of the biggest things for me, and something that I look at is there's two things. Like, what's something that I can do today that will scare me? Mm-hmm. And how can I increase my level of impact in the world? And when I say impact, I think a lot of people have this like huge thing, like a Tony Robbins impact or something like that. I don't mean that. I mean, what could you do at home with your wife today, or with your kids, or with a coworker, or with a sibling, or with a friend? Like, how can you make someone's life today better than it is? And sometimes it's super simple, because this is the stuff that allows for different vibrational frequency to enter your life, because it's filled with gratitude, it's filled with love, and that energy manifests everything you want in your life. You want to reach new sales goals in your life. It's not about doing that stuff. A lot of the times I was managing at one point in our commercial real estate office, I was managing probably about 15 salespeople. Okay.
Yep.
And I can tell you that it got to a point where everyone was pretty much on the same level. And yet certain people in a certain month would come in and have 7 deals, while everyone else in the office was like, there's no deals to be had. And I'm like, is that true? At the end of the day, it's just energy. And when your energy is filled with love and gratitude, and like Guy said, creativity is massive,
right?
Stuff flows into your life effortlessly. I mean, Mark was in Colombia, not making a single call, not speaking to anyone in business, and you brought in how much in business during that time?
There was a bunch. I mean, just a bunch of leads and new clients that came in, and it was, in the the 6-figure range from the things that we're now closing out as a result of the stuff that came into the pipeline while we were down there. My team back home was just rocking and kicking it, and we'd been thinking about this stuff for a long time, knowing that we wanted it, and something just flipped.
Yeah.
And
he wasn't doing a thing.
Yeah.
Like literally not a thing. He didn't communicate with any of the clients. He wasn't telling his team, call this person or do that or anything. He was just being, and every day he would come in and he's like, okay, we just signed this person, we just got these 70, and it was just incredible to watch. And I would just invite you all to realize that the doing that everyone's been teaching and preaching and all that stuff for a long time works. I'm not taking anything away from that. And it's limited, in what it is able to produce. If you want massive, like accelerated 4x, 5x results, it's not going to come from doing more. You can't split yourself into 4 or 5 more people. That's the only way that realistically that could happen. And there's this whole other world of creation and allowing and being, and that's what we were talking about here, where magic is the way things work. And you just go to a dinner party and the person sitting right next to you owns a company and overhears you talking and goes, hey, so wait, you train people? As a matter of fact, we were just sitting here talking at this table about how we have 100 salespeople and we want to train them. Could I speak to you? And you're like, what?
Where did that come from?
How did that just happen? And that becomes the norm.
Yeah.
Like that literally becomes your life. And so I just invite you to, if you're, listening to Mark, like Mark is amazing at this because he doesn't just come at you with he'll give you the tools, right? So like for your left brain, you're just like, and there's this whole other aspect that you can tap into that just makes life so juicy and effortless and awesome. And tap in.
Yeah, awesome. I love it, guys. There's a ton of great content in here, and I'm just so appreciative to get an hour, 20 minutes to hang out with you guys again. And I look forward to the time where we can get together in person again and sharing some more stories. Who knows, maybe even dance around in our underwear in a circle in the Maloca in Colombia. I don't know.
One of my favorite moments.
Yeah,
yes, I like
it.
Absolutely. And so I'm going to leave you guys wondering what that story was all about. And if you really want to know, ask us in the comments. We'll get something up there for you. Hey, guys, thank you very much. Guy and Ilan, how can we point people in your direction if they want to come and check out Satori Prime?
Yeah, easiest way is satoriprime.com is the easiest way to just find out everything that we're up to and doing in life. And then we also have a podcast, which we launch every Monday and Thursday. There's new episodes. And it's just, if you find it on iTunes or Stitcher, or even if you go on YouTube, it's just Have It All. That's the name of the podcast.
And it is awesome. I take it in weekly. It's you guys have a great show.
Thanks.
Very good. All right, hey, yeah, thank you guys very much. Appreciate you being on here. This has been awesome.
All right,
awesome. Thanks for having us.
Talk to you soon.
Got it.
Thanks for tuning in to the Survivor's Guide to Thriving podcast. You can find the show notes and links to all the resources mentioned in this episode by heading over to markjeweltraining.com/podcast. And if you feel so inclined, we'd love it if you could head over to iTunes and leave us a rating and review. That's what helps us move up in the charts so that more people can find us and start their surviving to thriving journey. See you next week.